Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. And Senator O'Neill just said that it's time to put some facts on the table, and I certainly concur with that statement. Sometimes you feel listening to these speeches from Labor senators that numbers are not their strong suit, because they seem to, in this instance, be expressing some kind of shock or horror that the level of number of people in Australia grow over time. Our population grows, and therefore, of course, sometimes the number of unemployed persons grow, or the number of employed persons as well grow over time. Indeed, during the Rudd-Gillard government, had 6 years there, the number of unemployed grew by 325,000 people. That 325,000 more people were unemployed at the end of the Rudd-Gillard government than there were at the beginning. Now, partly that was because of an increase in the unemployment rate during that period, but also it was an increase, of course, in the general population that we had. What was more concerning, and the population, I should say, has continued to grow under this government, so the number of unemployed persons has grown as well. What was more concerning under the Rudd-Gillard government, though, was not just the growth in the unemployment rate or indeed in the total number of people unemployed, but the decline in the participation rate, which is very important, which is a statistic not often referred to, but what that means is the percentage of people that could work who are looking for work. And at the start of the Rudd-Gillard government, the participation rate was 65.4%, and over the period of the government it fell to 64.7%, which doesn't sound like a big decline, but it is actually quite a large decline over history. And that, of course, happened because people were disaffected. They didn't think they could possibly find a job, so they weren't looking for a job, and they left the labour force and therefore were lost to our economy and our community in terms of their economic contribution at least. Now, since the Abbott government came to power, of course that participation rate was at 64.7%, and it's grown now to 65.1%. It's almost grown by half of what the fall had been in the Rudd-Gillard government. Now, clearly that normally indicates a vote of confidence. If more people are looking for work, it generally is a vote of confidence that there is potentially work out there. So this is indeed some green shoots here in our economy, that people are at least not becoming disaffected in their employment search, that they do want to look for work, and more people are out there looking for a job now, which is a good thing. Indeed, if in the last employment survey, which was released a couple of weeks ago for last month, for the July month, that Labor is so focused on, indeed 38,500 jobs were created in that month, in July, which is a definitely above average level of jobs growth, and indeed above market expectations at the time. But at the same time, the participation rate increased, and that's why the unemployment rate increased. If the participation rate hadn't have increased, and we got that 38,500 new jobs, unemployment would actually be 5.9% today, not 6.3%. So the reality is that the facts are the reason unemployment has increased is because more people are looking for work, and there are more jobs being created, which is a good thing. Indeed, it wasn't just in the month of July that more jobs had been created under this government. This year, and I think Senator Back mentioned that 163,000 jobs have been created this year alone, and that equates to around 23,000 jobs per month. Last year, 200,000 jobs were created, and that equates to around 16,200 jobs per month. So we're building on it. Things are getting better. Last year we had 16,200 jobs per month created. So far this year we've had 23,000 jobs. That's a good news story. We're heading in the right direction. We don't have a magic wand. We can't create jobs overnight, but we can create an economic environment where there is more confidence, which more people want to start a business and employ people, and that's exactly what's been happening. And when you compare that, last year jobs growth of 16,000 odd, this year more than 20,000 jobs a month created, you compare that to the last year of the Labor government. The last year of the Labor government, just 3,600 jobs per month were created in 2013. So we've gone from, in 2013, 3,600 jobs per month being created, to 2014, 16,000 jobs per month being created, and this year so far 23,000 jobs per month. It is a good news story. Things are heading in the right direction, and that's the way we should hope it to be. Now, that's not to say that there aren't challenges in our economy, and that's not to say that the last few years have been difficult for some parts of Australia. Where I'm based, in Rockhampton, it's in an area of a large area of coal mining. It has been very tough in the last couple of years with declining commodity prices and increasing unemployment. What we need to do in our area, of course, is to try and attract new jobs and new investment. And at the moment, we have two great threats to those things being created. There are two great things that will stop jobs being created in Central Queensland. One of them is tax and the other is regulation and red tape. Those two things, tax and regulation, are the biggest threats to jobs in Central Queensland right now today. On the regulation front, last week we saw a snake and a lizard stop a $16 billion coal mine project in Central Queensland. There wasn't anything about the snake or the lizard that caused this project to be stopped. It was the fact that certain bureaucratic processes hadn't been complied with, so a judge put that decision aside. Now, that project, it's a $16 billion project. It was first put forward for approval to the Department of Environment in November 2010. They are still waiting for a yes or no. It has now been 1,726 days since that investor asked whether or not he could get approval from the federal government to build a coal mine. 1,726 days. What country takes more than 1,700 days to say yes or no to a $16 billion project that will create potentially 10,000 jobs? And we're here talking about jobs. There's a 10,000 job project staring us in the face right now, and we want to argue about bureaucracy and whether or not the ministers looked at every sentence in a preservation order. It is madness. The other big threat to jobs is, of course, tax, because the Labor Party and the Greens want to bring back a carbon tax. Indeed, they want to bring back. They love the carbon tax the first time so much they want to bring back a sequel that's bigger and better and with a bigger budget than the first one. And because it's bigger, it's going to have a bigger impact on our economy. The first tax was going to cost thousands of jobs in Central Queensland. This one potentially would cost tens of thousands. We should oppose it and make sure that doesn't happen.